As we start to enter the Christmas and New Year's period, I've been having a lot of discussion with clients about the importance of thinking slightly differently about this time of year when it comes to managing your nutrition. And there are a number of reasons for this, such as being out of your usual routine, as well as the social aspects of food around this time of year when we think about meeting people who we haven't seen in a while, or Christmas dinners, or work night outs, and the general tendency to associate social occasions with food, as well as the fact that there is a lot of food available during this period, whether that be good quality whole foods such as leftovers from Christmas dinners, or whether that is more sweet, hyperpalatable foods that you may not want to be eating as much of. And you also have this feeling that the new year is on the horizon, and you either have associations with that of getting back on track after the Christmas and New Year's period, or you have some constraints coming into place, such as the upcoming start of a new sporting season, for example. So with all of these things being in play, as well as the general struggles that a lot of people have around this time of year when it comes to managing nutrition, I wanted to give a few key tips that I found useful when it comes to managing nutrition over this time. So number one would be to create a clear plan, because it's very easy to see the Christmas and New Year's period as this one big block of time, but I think it's very important to reassess that so that we can get clarity on what that actually involves. So if you were to see the Christmas and New Year's period as this 2 to 3 weeks where you are going to allow your nutrition to be completely off plan, that's very different than someone who was to take the 2 to 3 week period and really highlight maybe 2 or 3 or slightly more occasions or days where we want that level of flexibility. It's a couple of days or 2, 3, 4 days versus 2 to 3 weeks. And the progress or the backward steps that you can take within both of those scenarios is going to be very different. And I'm not saying that it has to be one or the other, but I would encourage you to decide on what that is for you, because if you leave it to chance, the likelihood is that it's going to end up in a worse position than you wanted it to, rather than in a better position. So what I recommend is to identify the key days, and that might be a Christmas party, that might mean Christmas Day or New Year's Day or a few more outside of that. And then I would recommend as much as possible keeping the days outside of that at a somewhat decent level at the very least. And what that's going to do is to prevent that idea of an extended Christmas and New Year's period where you spend maybe 4 weeks gaining body fat and losing fitness, only to then spend the next 2 to 3 months of pre-season, if you're playing sport, getting back to the level that you are at now going into the Christmas period. Second tip then that I would recommend is to decide on your baseline nutritional standards or non-negotiables. Because when it comes to those days, then outside of the days you've decided to be flexible, it's very much worth deciding on some baseline standards or non-negotiables with your nutrition, because of how easy it can be based on what we talk about around food availability, as well as the preponderance of options with food that you may not want to be over consuming on, and how much more likely it is that if you leave things to chance, you're going to end up in a worse position rather than a better position compared to what you had hoped for. And again, here, I'm not saying that you should be extremely restrictive on yourself if that's not something that you want to do. And at the same time, I'm not saying that you have to take a complete break from nutrition if that's not something that's aligned with your goals. Because someone with a serious fat loss goal might see their non-negotiables as strictly tracking their food on those days outside of the key flexible days that they have identified. And for other people, it might be just as simple as aiming to get in 3 solid meals in a day as their baseline or non-negotiable. Other options might include things like drinking a certain amount of water every day, or eating a certain amount of fruits and vegetables, or even getting in a certain amount of protein per day, or a certain number of protein feedings per day. And others might have food rules that are a little bit more like, I only eat chocolate in the evenings, or I don't snack between meals. Either way, I think it's worth having a level of baseline in place to act as almost a guardrail to allow you to still enjoy your food during that period, but not let it go to the point where it is derailing you or derailing you to more of an extent than you wanted to allow for yourself. Tip number 3 is then to structure your days even when you have the time off. So if you're used to a regular work schedule and you have a lot of time off then during the Christmas and New Year's period, it's very easy to slip into the habit of staying up late or sleeping in all day or just lounging around, grazing on junk food, and coming to the end of the break actually feeling worse than when you come into it. And I'm not saying that you can't indulge in some of those things through that period, but the important thing is to be intentional with them, meaning deciding ahead of time, so that you can actually get the outcomes that you want, whether that be progress with your training and nutrition, or whether that be that little bit of a break so that you're coming out of that period feeling better. So if you're hoping to enjoy that break without feeling like crap at the end of it, I'd recommend keeping some form of bedtime and wake up time, even if that's allowing more sleep than you would usually get. I'd recommend keeping some form of a meal schedule through the day. And I'd recommend planning some key things that you want to get done, whether that's a few DIY jobs around the house, or some trips out of the house, or even just some enjoyable things like reading a book or doing an educational course that you have been wanting to do. And whilst all of that might feel that little bit restrictive up front, it means that not only are you likely to enjoy the time off that bit more if you're willing to do that, but it also means that you're likely to fare out better in the transition back into your normal schedule when the break is over. Tip number 4 then is to maintain some level of training and activity. And again, with this one, I'm very open to my own clients going either way with this. So some will choose to take a full week or sometimes more off training, and others will actually train more during this period because they have the extra time and potentially the extra energy and recoverability from the extra food. But the important part again is to be intentional with it. Either way, I would still recommend keeping up some level of physical activity, which could mean keeping up your usual gym work and running or other cardiovascular work, but could just as easily mean taking a walk each day or even doing some light stretching each day at home. Either way, it's keeping some physical activity in there that is likely to help out with putting some of that extra food to good use within the body, to keep some stimulation on the muscles so that you're not as sore when then you return to full training, and allowing you to get some of the mental health benefits that come along with exercise, which can be important for a lot of people at this time of year, when the time of year can, for some people, bring extra stress for various reasons. And final tip then is to draw a line under it when the break is over. So whatever happens, when the time comes to get back to it, whenever that is for you, I'd recommend drawing a line under the Christmas and New Year period completely, whether it's went well or whether it hasn't. Because if it's went well, that's great, and you can then carry that momentum with you going forward. But if it didn't go so well, there's nothing you can do to go back in time and fix it. So the next best thing you can do is to get a plan in place for going forward and start working towards that. Thanks for listening. If you'd like more free resources or info about my performance nutrition coaching program, hit the link in the podcast description.